macros, there's a lot of confusion and kind of black boxness surrounding them. A lot of people don't have a good feel for what they do and don't do. And so I just wanted to create a video to show kind of the power of a simple macro and explain that, a lot more can be done with it. So to start, basically there's two sorts of macros. One would be for data processing. That would be if you wanted to move information between a couple of files and consolidate it or summarize it or create a report off of it. And the other would be for systems integration, which is where a database is feeding a workbook and is constantly refreshing it at someone's command. So that's kind of an overview of the two basic types of macros. What I wanted to show you here is how you can take kind of a daily process or a daily movement and manipulation of data and automate it. So what I have here is I have my bank statement. I just pulled the most recent one. I don't think there's any sensitive information in here other than you might see how much I spend at Sam's Club. So this is exactly what the download looks like coming out of my bank. And there's a couple of problems here. So one of the problems is a company like Walmart, in the bank name field, it will have all this extra information and maybe the location. And so Walmart here is, I couldn't summarize it if I just ran a pivot table off this, right? So what I'd like to do, and what I'm going to do, is I'm going to create a table. And in fact, I already have created a table. So let me start with that. So I have this table that takes a key identifier of this bank name field. So in each of these cells, there is an identifier that lets me know and is unique to that particular vendor. So for Kroger, I would use something like Kroger, and I wouldn't include the pound 0844. Right, same thing with Walmart. This Skillshare, maybe there's lots of different locations with lots of different phone numbers that the bank may bring in depending on where my transaction is at. But when I summarize it, all I wanted to say is Skillshare. And the same problem that exists with my names is my categories. Sometimes my bank will label something as clothing, or like here, this is an engineer and it says clothing, right? That's not what it is. That's for a remodel I'm doing. So additionally, I added a category that I would like to apply to each vendor in the transaction. So this is my table now. And so in my table, I have a unique ID from the bank name field. I have the category that the bank gives it. I don't really need this, but I included it. And then this is the name that I'd like to apply. So it's just sort of normalizing the name. So if Sam's Club has a space in it or if it doesn't, either way, I want that to be one vendor. So that's what this column does. And then the category, as I go through and look at each vendor, I know what the category is. And so I've just put a more appropriate category for some summary. And then that's all going to feed into this pivot table here, which you can see I've already ran this once before, but based on the data I have here, which is this, there is no information. So this is my bank download, and I have a macro here that says import. And what this does is it looks for that file, and then when it finds that file, it takes the contents of it and it puts it in here, and then it runs essentially a VLOOKUP. It's slightly more complicated than a VLOOKUP, but it runs something like that to layer in the fields that I've created, and I have them my name and my category. So if I push that, you can see all this is just directly bank data. And so I've updated my bank data and I've simplified, standardized the names and categories. And so this is sort of the report that comes out of it. And maybe pivot tables are great because you can drill in and see more information if you want. So you can see here that as far as gas goes, I could see this is the underlying bank data, the bank name. And so if there was information in that field that was valuable, I could make it a part of the pivot table so I could drill in and see. So the other thing is with reports like this, and I don't know why you create a report of your own credit card statement and send it to somebody, but within a business context, I think you could see the application of something like this. But often reports are mailed out daily, at least where I work. There's a couple of people that every day they have to pull together data and they have to send an email to a group of people. Maybe it's a manager, maybe it's just a stakeholder that needs to know what's going on. So I've created another macro that will take all this information, it will attach the workbook, and it'll paste this pivot table into the body of the email. And I've set it up to just go to me. You could bypass the whole display of the email, but I think it's useful to just review the email. So I'll just show you when we generate the email. It takes a second because it's got to open up Outlook, and then I've used the date function to give me a dynamic title based on the day. So if I did this in July, I would say July 2020, and then it comes from my default Outlook account, and I just hard-coded my email address in there. But you could do a lot of different things. You could leave this blank if the person you emailed it to changed every day or every week or however often. There's a bunch of different options there. But then I have my message that I would send if this were a standardized email to a team. And then there's the paste of the pivot table we've shown. And like I said, sometimes this isn't enough, so we include the actual workbook so that somebody could come in and they could see the underlying data if they wanted to. This is optional. I find it useful in a lot of cases, but sometimes all you need is just a snapshot. So once that's like that, you can send it, and it's done. So that's just a very basic overview of how a data processing macro could work. And there's a lot of different ways you can use this. This is just something very simple that I found very useful in the work I've done.